007 First Light launched May 27th, 2026 on PlayStation 5, Xbox, and PC. IO Interactive, the Hitman studio, spent 6 years building a third-person action-adventure origin story for James Bond, and the result captures who this character is better than most of the films have in the past 2 decades. Mostly the Daniel Craig films, okay? A few of those are great, some of them aren't. The gameplay, holding it together, stumbles in some spots. A few enemy NPCs left their brains in the break room, but this is the most fun a Bond game has been since someone plugged 4 controllers into an N64. I'm the real-life Fake Wizard, and this is a Fake Wizard's review of 007 First Light. If this video brings you any value at all, hit the subscribe button, as we're posting lots of reviews every single week. 007 First Light follows a 26-year-old James Bond played and motion captured by Patrick Gibson before he earns his 00 status. He's a Royal Navy air crewman who catches M16's attention after a defiant rescue in Iceland and gets recruited into the agency's revived 00 training program. The story sends him globe-trotting from Malta to Slovakia to Vietnam and beyond, chasing a rogue agent while a deeper conspiracy takes shape around him. IO built this as a linear action-adventure with stealth systems borrowed from Hitman. You sneak through embassy galas, brawl through nightclubs, hack electronics with a Q-watch, and choose whether to ghost through an area or blow it up wide open. Missions alternate between open-ended sandbox zones and tighter scripted action sequences. Think Uncharted cinematic pacing grafted onto Hitman's infiltration system. After the campaign wraps in about 15 hours, a tac sim mode offers replayable challenge missions with escalating modifiers and unlockable gear. Part 1. IO Interactive built the right James Bond. The opening mission acts as a buy-in sequence for the player to see if they're going to like this game. For me, this was an overwhelming yes. Bond's helicopter goes down, survivors need extraction, and his commanding officer orders him over the radio to stand down, that there's a less than 1% chance of a successful rescue. Bond says no, rips the mic out of his ear, and goes to rescue the survivors anyway. That is James Bond, and it's fantastic. It's that moment where you're like, okay, we're playing the hero here. Patrick Gibson plays this younger Bond with the right balance of arrogance and conviction. He's cocky and he runs on instinct over protocol. IO gave Gibson dialogue that sounds like a person who believes he's the smartest guy in every room and happens to be right about 60% of the time. The other 40%, he gets punched in the mouth and the game lets that happen without undermining him. And the whole time, you're rooting for him because it's a young James Bond. And it feels like what a young James Bond would be. The supporting cast holds up as well. Lenny James brings weight to Greenway, Bond's mentor, and the dynamic between the two carries the emotional stakes of the entire campaign. M, Q, and Moneypenny fill their roles without feeling like cardboard cutouts of their film counterparts. And IO's original characters hold their own against 70 years of franchise legacy. IO treated Bond like a person with specific instincts and a moral compass that points in a direction his superiors don't appreciate. Bond defies orders, and the game rewards it. He acts on gut feelings over intel, and the mission pivots around his personality instead of forcing him down some predetermined track. Part 2, this game exists to recruit a new generation into the Bond franchise. The discourse around First Light has centered on 2 camps: Hitman fans wondering whether IO abandoned their sandbox, and Bond loyalists comparing Gibson to Daniel Craig. Both miss the play that IO is making. This game is for the generation with zero attachment to James Bond. Gen Alpha does not know who Bond is. They didn't grow up watching Brosnan on TNT, and Daniel Craig's final film came out when most of them were in elementary school. The franchise has a name recognition problem with anyone under 20 years old. That is just kind of marketing truth when it comes to James Bond as a character. IO Interactive designed First Light as an answer to that problem. IO built this whole package to make Bond relevant to someone discovering him for the first time. This might sound more like a business observation than a game review, but I think it matters here. If First Light works, Bond thrives in gaming for another decade. But if it misses, the franchise stays a film property arguing about who replaces Daniel Craig. IO took that pressure and turned it into a game that a 15-year-old can pick up knowing nothing about Bond and walk away understanding why people have cared about this character for 6 decades. Part 3, the montages. Cinematic games have long been criticized for having playable movie problems. This is especially seen on PlayStation games. God of War 2018 trained a generation of players to flinch at cinematic sequences in their action games. Long cutscenes and scripted walking sections have burned enough goodwill that cinematic, or even using the word cinematic, reads as a warning label for a vocal chunk of the audience. First Light uses short, cinematic montages throughout its campaign, and in this case, it's a very unique experience. The difference is in participation. These montages run for seconds, and your inputs hold the rhythm of it together. A rapid sequence of Bond doing something reckless, your button presses keeping the pace and landing right before full gameplay resumes. The game treats these as punctuation between action scenes and between missions. They never drag, and they never take the controller from your hands. You get a breath between stealth and combat sections without sitting through 3 minutes of exposition you can't skip. Whereas the Bond films run on sharp editing and the rhythm of a spy threading through a world that wants him dead, IO translated that editing language into these interactive moments, and I think they were a lot of fun. Part 4, great gameplay with seams showing. Combat in First Light bounces between stealth infiltration, melee brawling, and gunplay, but at its core, this is a stealth infiltration game. The game gives you enough tools to stay engaged across missions without feeling like you're repeating yourself. It's in the enemy AI that there are visible seams to this game, and plenty of people have addressed this online too. Sometimes you'll run past guards who should spot you, and you'll watch NPCs stare into the void during sequences that should feel perhaps a little more tense. However, to compare this to other stealth games that have been released recently, like Star Wars Outlaws shipped with broken stealth mechanics, and it still runs terribly to this very day. First Light's AI problems are a fraction of the scale of Star Wars Outlaws. Look, I've tried to get back into Outlaws multiple times in the past year, and I just can't. It is a bad game. In First Light, you'll notice some gaps, but you'll laugh at them more than curse at them, and you won't put the controller down. Gunplay in 007 is functional and brisk. IO keeps firefights short and varied so the shooting never outstays its window, even if it never stands on its own merits. I'd describe it as having fun the whole way through, despite there being a clear ceiling above you. 007 First Light retails for $70. IO captured Bond's character very well and delivers a very satisfying experience with a compelling story. Yes, you'll bump against combat jank sometimes, and some enemy AI has gaps, but not often enough to break or ruin the experience. This renders 007 First Light an 8 out of 10 for us here at Fake Wizards, and if you're a James Bond fan, I think you gotta play it at some point. However, at $70, wait for a sale. This game is good. It's got 15 hours of gameplay plus mission replay challenges that extend the tail end, and that's all good and all, but $70 is a lot of money. If this drops to $50 or even $60 USD, that's a better price point. $70 for all the games today feels wrong, feels criminal, and we don't like it here. Anyway, if you found value in this review and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.